Hi, everyone. We welcome you all to our second episode of this podcast series that we are doing. And the topic today is that we're going to delve into is extremely close to my heart. And yes, we are going to talk biomimicry for the next, say, half an hour or so. And out of, say, approximately 7,500 contacts that I have on LinkedIn, I could pull out one person who is actually an expert on the matter, and I'm very pleased to invite him to this podcast. It is none other than Anuj Jain. Welcome, Anuj. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Shweta. Very good. Pleasure to be here.
We're just so happy to have you here, and I would like to tell all my viewers that he is an ecologist at heart, and he runs a biomimicry-based design practice called as biosea in Singapore. I would encourage everybody, especially the students and the young professionals, to check out the work he's doing. He's doing some really cutting-edge research and innovation in this field, and let's see the magic that he weaves. So his list of credentials. I mean, I don't think that I can, his background, his research, his experience is so vast that if I start talking about it, then I might need to have to record another podcast for that. So I just give it over to Anuj. He can probably introduce himself a little bit and why is this so close to your heart and why are you doing this and why are you so passionate about it and maybe a little bit background about you and your practice.
Yeah, it's a big question. So I have different backgrounds, like many people end up these days. I'm trained as an ecologist. My degrees are also in engineering. And for the longest time, I tried to make sense of the two worlds, trying to connect them in my minds, my head. And um, this was nearly 20 years ago when I came across a book called Biomimicry Innovation Inspired by Nature, written by Janine Benyus. And that changed my life because, by reading that book, said by chance, serendipity, it allowed me to see how I can connect the two worlds, how nature has so many design solutions, design ideas that we could learn from and then apply them to design. Um, and at that time, I was still a student, and um, through working through my career through different degrees um, and experiences. I have a PhD in ecology, worked in the wildlife
Hey,
conservation sector, and which I still love going out there in the jungles of Southeast Asia
I
and
do see your videos while
working
you're
on.
doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. And working on species. So that's something close to my heart, but there's always a lingering question about, we see this incredible world. How can we bring it to design and how can we inspire better solutions that are out there? And through that bigger piece, how to also kind of sort of connect with the non-biologists. So that is a
Yes,
part
yes.
that inspires me. Um, so I set up BioC about 6 years ago. Started out as a small project where, we were very interested in the built environment space, thinking about how to bring about these ideas to architects, planners, landscape architects, etc. And really, I was approaching it from the space of, how can the built environment function like nature? So if you look at BioC's tagline, it is also shaping built environments to function like rainforests. And I underline the word function because it's more than looking at something, but actually understanding and making sure that it actually works and functions like the nature model that we ought it to be. Um, yeah, so with that, of course, challenges came by, which we can talk about, but we've stayed true to the purpose and we have kept the practice very focused on the built environment, thinking about uh, these design solutions, but equally having a very strong ecology focus. So a big piece of the work is actually working with architects um,
Yeah.
and the built environment professionals to
Yes.
bring about better design,
Yes.
bring about better greenery, and we tackle it in multiple ways, you know, uh, by doing field surveys, actually trying to find out what is out there, when a building gets built, what can survive, what can thrive. We do assessments, we do
Sure.
predictions, we quantify the whole gamut of things, about greenery. And we also then try to bring in the biomimicry piece about, you know, how do you curate a story that amplifies nature. And we also think about exhibits, um, et cetera, that allow us to kind of bring the whole nature piece come to life, through innovation,
Right.
through different types of thinking. Um, yeah, so that's largely the space we operate in across different scales, from, small bungalow scales all the way to master plan and district.
So are you doing work in Singapore only?
Um, no, the projects are really varied. So much, well, maybe
Right.
half and half. We do,
Enough. Yeah.
given we are based here, of course, there's a strong Singapore focus. We
Right.
have projects here, but also, projects in Southeast Asia, including Malaysia,
Great.
Thailand, a couple of projects running in India,
Oh,
but also in the
be
Middle
great to know
East.
about those running in India for sure.
Yeah. So across a
And
variety of climates, from the tropics to the desert, really.
oh, that's really great to know. When you're talking about this book, I also read a book called 14 Patterns in Biophilic Design a while back. And I
Mhm.
think that was something that really had a lot of influence in me as well. And I did make a short video as a precursor to this podcast on biomimicry and something to do with biomorphic patterns because I do a lot of architecture and interior design projects here. And of course, everything is very client driven, as you know, but I do try to do as much as I can from my side. So, yeah, that is something that I think both of us resonate with. Since we are here, we would love to talk about some of the projects that you're doing, any real world examples. Of course, I'm aware that you have a biomimicry design toolkit as well now. So, and there would be talk of how you are developing some facade skin. So just bring it on. Just we would like to know more about that.
Yeah, so maybe we zoom out a little bit, and I would acknowledge that, um, biomimicry is one of those disciplines that a lot of people get excited about. And
Right,
as awareness about nature is increasing,
right.
biophilic design is becoming, you know,
Yes,
something that most people would know. Um, but biomimicry, while it's well known, it is something we've figured is still a challenging topic to apply in the industry, simply because it's
yes,
so multidisciplinary and it's sort of cutting
right,
edge, cross-cutting, while it's cutting edge. So, when you propose a new design, um, you know, anything new will have to be tested, before it goes out into the industry, if it's applied to a real building. So that is a big challenge, whether there's proof, whether there is the right infrastructure, the right tools, the right ecosystem to actually build what you're proposing, right? So that is a context we have in Asia, largely speaking. And
right.
in fact, a lot of biomimicry work, you come across in Asia tends to be happening in the labs, right? Which is more, uh, academic and, more of a proof of concept stage. So
Right,
one ambition that we had was really see how can we bring it to practice while we're working with architects and planners. Um, so this biomimicry design toolkit that I'm holding in front of me is looking at specifically building skins, and here we take the lens of the tropics. This is the climate that Singapore is in Southeast Asia largely, and southern India as well, for that matter. Um, Hot and humid climate, and we wanted to understand, in this climate, which is conducive for us humans to live in, or if only we could ventilate it better, if we could work with the elements of nature, how could we then design better, right? So the toolkit is actually a collection of design ideas, a collection of different projects that people have done in the region that we have curated, and we have then added different frameworks. How do you start to look at them across scales? How do you look at them, you know, through the lens of commercialization, whether it's in the research stage, whether it's already tested, whether it's scaled up. Um, and then we've also um, imagined. I think that visioning process is quite important, because what we didn't want to do is have biomimicry sort of sit in a silo, because we have too many silos already. And
Yeah.
while there are different bios, right? There is biophilia, biomimicry,
Right.
bioutilization, biomorphism, plus plus. Um, a key driver was to think about how can some of these ideas come together, right? So through the toolkit, we've tried to envision hybrid facades that use some of the uh, good design principles, right? Which would be about maybe better ventilation, improvised structures, but also what would a biomimicry layer on that look like? Yeah. So we've been, as an example, inspired by the elephant skin, and
Oh,
the elef and the elephants are special because, they live in a hot and humid climate like us most of the times. You can picture an elephant walking through a savanna, right?
yeah.
In heat, and of course, this animal is huge, right? So it produces a lot of body heat as it metabolizes. To cool itself, it has adopted several features, right? Such as a wrinkled skin. Um, and we were inspired by that. So me and my team of collaborators, both Singapore and worldwide, we studied the elephant skin patterns, and we have applied that to the design facade. Um, so we've created these patterns,
Oh,
um, which is essentially mimicking the elephant skin, but blown up several times.
right.
Yeah. So if you look at it in the cross section, it's not flat, but actually has these uh, grooves and or valleys and troughs, if you will, and these create um, more surface area and allow for cool spots to be created in your facade, which thereby allows better heat dissipation and better thermal performance. So we are excited about products and ideas like these, which can
Hmm.
be applied to existing facades, and it starts a conversation, right? To say,
Right.
oh, we didn't know elephants could do that. So, you know,
Right.
um, there is that idea about talking to the architect and bringing it to a product stage and applying it to buildings, which we are pursuing actively. And the other thing is about kind of zooming out and intervening at the design stage, right? Which we do as well, to say, okay, elephant skin facades are one type of idea, but there are several others that we've thought about as well, which are encapsulated in the toolkit and plus plus. So, how about we work together in a design charrette, a workshop, and kind of ideate these principles, make them place-based. And often, there can be a bit of hesitation because the architects may not know where we're heading towards. But I think
Right.
these charrettes often help um, kind of open up, strike a conversation, and then see, where can we go to? Yeah. So we've had some of these interventions, and yeah, some of these ideas are hopefully going into the real life soon.
Wish you great luck for that. And is there any particular project that you worked on that has a very special place in your heart, or something that's um, kind of they would really like the world to know and talk about, considering we also have students and younger professionals who might not have access to, I mean, of course, everybody reads a lot about this, but coming from a professional like you, translating this into design, and how with an example, if you were to explain to the younger professionals.
Yeah. So I'd like to go back to that elephant skin example. So we've actually
Yeah.
developed several prototypes, and those are now out there, being tested in different walls. So we're actively collecting data about the thermal performance, about the material performance, um, And I would add that, you know, there have been some research papers out there thinking about elephant skin facades, um, 3, 4 years ago. And,
Oh, really?
kind of like the basic research about elephants in has been known for a long time, right? But it's about someone in the industry pushing this. So I think we are we are not just sort of developing the research idea, but also prototyping it, scaling it up. We've developed different prototypes. Our
So you
pipeline
would have
is
done a lot of sampling and prototypes and doing a lot
exactly,
of testing
exactly,
and doing like real life testing on
mhm,
some building in the tropics
exactly.
and
So we've been doing that, and we've developed three different materials. So I was holding clay before. This is
yeah.
actually in collaboration with a local partner called Ferticlay, and they have been using so-called waste, construction waste, which is
Okay.
often, you know, mixed with rubble and kind of downgraded. So that clay is
Oh,
taken, mixed with food waste, and therefore we're trying to make this as sustainable as possible.
nice.
It's not even baked, so we're trying to reduce the carbon footprint. We've coated it with different materials, um, which give it the glaze and durability. Then the other one is, of course, the traditional cement, and we've developed it in
Oh,
different patterns,
okay.
forms, and so you can already see the difference in form, right? The clay
Right.
one is a simpler structure, and as you change the bump sizes, I refer to all of these as bumps. So as you change the bump size, proportion, shape, the performance increases, and the cooling performance is greater. So we've been playing around with those ideas, um, and also looked at mycelium. Right. So here, for example, is a mycelium
Oh,
tile. So this is super light, as it's also
yeah.
made with waste products, and there's paper waste as well. So here is
Oh,
a whole
that's great.
plethora of things that we are approaching,
I understand.
and I think some of those are up already, and we are very happy with the data that has come up. Um, so I would suggest, be a lookout on some of these innovative ideas, um, and also think about materials, which all of us do these days, right? How do you go circular? And so, I was talking about cement, clay, and mycelium, and these are great examples for circular products, because these are essentially using waste materials, and they can decompose as well.
And talking a bit about the performance of this particular cladding, can you run us through some numbers as to, what is the difference in temperature that you get? Because I currently, I'm in New Delhi and we touched almost 50 degrees Celsius
Hmm.
this summer.
That's
So
right.
everybody's been boiling here. So talking about sustainable facade solutions, obviously air conditioning is not the solution. And it would just kind of you just throw some light on, say, developing this prototype and how much of a difference could this make in terms of a temperature difference and what are you able to achieve right now in your research and what kind of numbers?
Yeah, I think the temperature change is the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah,
And of course, it's a product of many different configurations, right? How your building is designed, and what is the indoor temperature. But I think certainly, um, no tiles, no facade tiles versus a facade tile. With simple configurations to more complex configurations, we see heat reduction anywhere from about 25% to about 50 plus percent.
oh, that's huge.
Yeah, so that was very exciting, and it also changes with materials. Um, you know, Clay, for example, is a great material that we could work with, because it has these moisture absorbing properties, as we all know.
Right,
Um, Cement, not so much. It's sort of
not so
somewhere
much. Yeah,
in
still
between.
cement. Yeah.
Yeah, and mycelium also has great performance. So we are looking at
Okay.
anything from 20 to 50%, depending on the patterns that we're working with. And this is in a tropical climate, but equally in a desert climate, we see actually even more gains. Um, we are trying to
Okay.
quantify what that means to temperature. So that is, a bit more complicated, because we need to kind of put up a life-size wall such that it has all the right controls, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we make sure, there's no air conditioning, and we run it wrong enough. So I don't have that temperature number yet, but
Yeah,
definitely
it's fine. Whatever you
we see
said
the
gives us a
percentage
very
gains.
fair idea of, that how effective it is and how we can develop such amazing sustainable solutions for facades because I think buildings are like an they're big energy guzzlers. They're
Mhm.
contributing to global warming, climate change, and climate change is it's just here. It's knocking at our doors. It's not far away. So anyone who is developing such solutions is obviously thinking about the future, and I'm glad someone is doing it. And I mean, you are doing it. So kudos to you because. As we were talking earlier as well, I'm sure there would be a lot of challenges and roadblocks in your way because, I mean, I know about India that there's not a lot of actual practice or say a lot of knowledge in this domain as yet. I'm sure it's a bit advanced in Singapore, but still it is I'm sure navigating a design practice and making it commercially viable and still going on and on and on. So kudos to you, of course. And would you like to share some myths about this whole thing? I mean, of course, people might think that oh my God, he's just saying all these numbers and showing us these fancy tiles, but they might be very expensive. And oh my God, I think it's just something that's in research is never going to become practical. So people do have such kind of things in their mind, and I'm sure you would be facing a lot of challenges to bring
Mhm.
this all together. Would you like to talk a bit about that?
Yeah.
I'm
So
sure. I'm sure.
where do we start, right?
Yeah, I know it's a
I,
long.
I think first thing is just being authentic about this, right?
Yeah.
So there is um, superficial understanding about how nature runs and um, how it functions, and so there is sometimes a very literal interpretation of biomimicry, and
Yes.
I think it's the lowest hanging fruit. Um, so, for example,
Easiest to do, probably. Yeah.
yeah, this for example, we could think about butterfly wings, right? And we all
Yes.
know, butterflies have structural colors, and it's the colors are in the how the scales have been assembled, right? So, based on that microstructure, depending on how the light falls, you different colors emerge. Um, but sometimes if you want to study that, develop products and all that, that's kind of a long road, a product driven approach to biomimicry, and it would be about
Yeah.
colors, right? A simplistic view would be, I want to just do biomorphism and think, develop a building that has the shape of butterfly wings, right? But that's not
Yeah.
biomimicry. I think we could do
Yeah.
more because, we haven't quite tapped into how this organism functions in its environment and
Right.
actually utilize the
Because I see
full
mostly
benefit.
examples like that only going on as to what you're saying. Just reminds me that I think yesterday only, like a post cropped up on my feed, in which there were these some vegetation
Mhm.
being compared to a particular building, and
Mhm.
I don't know why they were even doing that. I mean, I just found it a bit superstitious. But yeah, sorry to interrupt
Right.
you. We just had to
No,
talk about it. Yeah.
which is true. So I also do some teaching at
Yes.
NUS, National
Yes, I know.
University, and that is one question I'll always probe students, right? Um, Incidentally, there's another studio I run in Malaysia at Taylor's University in
Oh,
Kuala Lumpur, and that is a full-blown studio in biomimicry.
oh,
So
nice.
the students actually go through the whole design cycle, in the built environment, and they choose their problems and design prototypes and all that. So often I'm probing them on that question: Why are you doing this, right? Does the organism or the environment actually do what you're trying to solve, and not just create something that is superficial? So I think that is one myth that we must debunk, that you know there needs to be a good understanding of biomimicry. So consult an expert or do your own research. There's lots of tools out there, including free resources out there on the internet that people could learn
And of course, we
and
can refer to
study.
your toolkit.
can refer to the toolkit
Always.
we've developed, right? To globally, there is a biomimicry global network,
Okay.
and a little bit of word on it. It was started by Biomimicry Institute in the US, which is championed by Janine Benyus. So I did my professional certification with them several years ago, and
Yes.
you know there are several other professionals like myself, including in India, who are very talented and you know fully knowledgeable to consult people in that space should there be interest, and people can always reach
Mm.
out to the wider network. So there is expertise out there. People just need to tap into that. Um, and I would also like to zoom out a little bit to say, while we've talked about products, we should also
Yeah.
be thinking at larger scales, right?
Yes,
So
of course.
personally, I get very excited about thinking about or applying biomimicry to landscapes, right? Because that kind of brings in
Of
ecology
course.
as well.
Of course.
And we have done some trails, and you can imagine an interpretive experience whereby it's a landscape that is lush, but also it has signages, it has displays, it has exhibits, it has touch features, it has maybe sounds, emotives, that really let people feel the place, but also kind of
Mm.
connect it back. So imagine if you're in Delhi, right? You would be thinking about, you know, the natural flora and fauna that existed. Maybe you're thinking about the ridge. Maybe you're thinking about the vegetation that exists in NCR region um, before all this development happened, right? And
Right.
what animals would have thrived there, what plants would have thrived there, what can we learn from them? How did they actually thrive in that space? How did they purify their air? How did they create a microclimate? Right? So through these natural interventions, we we talk about these stories. We also 3D print, right? So people can
Oh,
touch. We also do QR codes because there may be many tech campuses these days, and there are engineers out
yes.
there, trying
Yes.
to innovate, but we don't often think about innovation looking at nature, right? Literally going outside the
Right.
box. So, or what if your
Right.
trails can actually kind of trigger these ideas? Yeah. So, and suddenly then we go outside that product space and we have nature at its vast
Yes.
expanse.
Yes. Yes.
We
Yes.
play, and yeah. So we really work at all of these scales, and I would encourage everyone to think outside the box, think about how can we learn from nature in that big outdoors and apply that to the workspace, because I think that connection is where it's beautiful.
Yes, of course. Nature is the biggest teacher and the biggest healer. So, since you spoke a bit about the projects going on in India, I'm just a bit intrigued to know
Mhm.
that what work are you doing here? Maybe you would just like to know about it, or maybe see it, or later on find out about it for all the people out here.
Yeah, so we've been working with architectural practices and MNC projects, campus projects largely. Can't disclose the details right now. They are under
That's fine. That's
design and
fine.
construction. But it is looking at the ecology and the biomimicry piece, working with the landscape architects closely and creating that whole ecology story. So the projects are, I have two running right now, one in Noida, another in Bangalore.
Oh,
We
really? I have in Noida. Please tell me where.
right.
Yeah,
Um,
you can disclose whenever you want to.
and again, looking at how can we create a forest inside the campus using uh, different principles whereby we densify nature, but we also assess. So we do these assessments looking at pre-development, post-development, how many additional species of flora and fauna are coming in as a result of these practices and interventions. How much carbon does it
Okay.
sequester? How much cooling does it provide? How much
Yeah,
biodiversity
that's
net gain is
important.
it providing us? So, in totality, what is the impact? We've also created the nature story, so creating nature trails, and then hopefully some of these design ideas that we spoke about also find a place there. Um, in all of these, I've also tried to integrate wetlands and always go back to the natural habitats that existed in Noida, in Bangalore. Um, and separately, kind of zooming out of the built environment space, I will still have projects in the conservation space that we draw inspiration from. So,
Right.
looking at, several threatened species in Thar Desert.
Right.
Also have projects in Chambal, and a little bit in the Northeast as well. So there
Okay.
is a full plate of projects running. And I think those conservation projects not only give us the inspiration, but also kind of show us the way, what plants thrive, and then we kind of bring it back to the built environment. Yeah.
Well, now that I know that there's a project in Noida, obviously off the conversation, I'm going to take this out from you and visit it
Sure.
someday whenever, because it'll be definitely a treat to see as to what work you're doing here. And in case you come for a site visit, I would definitely like to go to the site with you and see
Sure.
what's going on there in my neighborhood. So it's been a pleasure, having this conversation, and I think you've changed my viewpoint also a bit, considering I'm an architect and we just conditioned to think about the facade, the building, and it's just very. I mean, like I think you've used the word zoom out 3, 4 times in this
Mhm.
conversation, which kind of it just leads me on to believe that we all need to zoom out. We
Mhm.
are very conditioned in our boxed environments. And when you say we need to think out of the box, we need to go out of our boxes and we need to zoom out, look at the ecology, look at the wildlife. And we're just thinking about very how do you say it's very superficial out there in the market.
Mhm.
And when you talk about biomimicry, definitely what you were explaining earlier, that is very true, of course. People just taking up shapes from here and there, and of course yeah, I mean, it is a way of maybe adapting, doing some forms, and that is okay, fine once in a while, it's okay. In the sense of, trying to design the product, fine, you take some inspiration from
Exactly.
somewhere.
Exactly.
But then, without knowing the deeper essence of it, all that is probably not the real side of biomimicry as I have understood from this whole conversation. And
Exactly.
it's exciting to know a lot about your product and what it could do. And I'm sure it's just going to do wonders when it comes out there. And probably
Mhm.
we're going to look at some very path-breaking coming soon from your office. And it might just save all of us from this disaster we're heading towards.
Indeed. I mean, I would also say, what also needs to happen is this connect, right? And again, as one
Right.
practice, we can only do so much. Um,
Yeah.
but in India, there is so much happening in the built environment space. But India
Yes,
is
a lot.
also a country that has immense wildlife, immense nature, right? There are
Yes. Yes.
some
I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah.
extraordinary biologists, ecologists, conservationists in the
Yes.
country.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if I would be honest, that was a pain point for me, when I set up the practice to, bridge that gap, because most of
Yeah.
the uh, discussion in India ends at the environmental impact assessment, right?
Ah,
So a
yeah.
team
I
kind of
know.
does an impact assessment, a report is delivered, and then done. But it shouldn't,
I know
right?
what you're saying.
The
Yeah.
design discussions need to happen all the way until you have the biologist at the design table, right?
Yes.
So how do you think about nature in totality? And while the clients may not be ready, of course, it's still down to dollars and cents. Does it
Yes.
cost more?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about differentiating your product or building from others. Sometimes it's creating a
Of
new,
course.
unique selling
New
point,
imagery. Yeah.
new imagery, that story. But we must do what we can because, climate change is for here to stay, habitat loss is here to stay, cities are denser. We need to bring back nature, right? For our own
Yeah.
survival.
We're already seeing the disasters, what is
Exactly.
happening all over in India as well as abroad as well.
So the challenge is out there. It's about how do we rally enough people to work in the space such that we can
Yeah.
make a meaningful difference.
Absolutely. Um, So I'm just about to close this conversation, and anything that you would like to add at the end, or anything, any takeaways, or anything that you'd like to add before I sum it up.
Well, there'll be many challenges, especially in fields that are new and untested. But if there are young practitioners, students out there, I would say, don't be afraid to take the step. Do what you feel passionate about, and
Yeah,
the
think
world
out
will
of the
open up.
box.
Exactly.
I'm sure it's open up for you, so it'll open up for everybody else.
Indeed.
Um, yeah, so yeah, I am going with a lot of insight from you, Anuj. Thank you so much for sparing time for this podcast. I know we've been doing our up and down and not being able to uh, make this happen, but I'm so glad that we did this. And so, thank you so much for your valuable time. And I hope to see you sometime for sure, either in India or Singapore.
Pleasure. Likewise. Speak soon. Bye.
Bye.